Good morning. Today we're actually going to read a book about life in a wetland is what it's called. And this is one of our informational textbooks. Remember, informational text has certain features. We could read it all the way through, which is what we're going to do today because it's not a real long book. Or we could read just different parts that really helped us solve our problem or help us find the information we're looking for. So one way that we can do that. Remember, a lot of informational books have certain features. This one has an index in the back. So like if I was looking for certain information about dragonflies, it tells me the page that I'm going to find that on. Looks like page 19. Yes, page 19. And if we turn to page 19 in the book, it will tell us something about dragonflies, and in here it says dragonflies and other insects buzz around. So in this case, it gives us another text feature, which is a caption, which explains what the picture's about. This is a red-necked grebe catching a dragonfly. A grebe looks a lot like a duck. I don't think I've seen one of those around my pond, but I'm not an expert either. But obviously they eat dragonflies, so we get to see it eating the dragonfly on page 19. Another feature that our informational textbook might have is a table of contents, and we would normally find that in the beginning. Let's see, does this book have a table of contents, or does it just go into the story? No table of contents here. So if we were looking for information, we would really want to look in the index to find that. So let's go ahead and read about life in a wetland. Remember from our first video that there are a lot of different kinds of wetlands. In the back, there's, I believe in this one, yes, there's a picture glossary. If you were in my class, we learned about the reindeer, and I think Miss Bolt's class might have learned about turkeys, and maybe Miss Buscourt's. In my class about reindeer, we had a glossary in the back that had pictures. And this is a picture glossary. It doesn't have the definitions with it, but it shows pictures of the different type of wetlands. So in the upper corner here, I'm sorry, I'm backwards, there's a bog, a marsh, and then a wetland and a swamp. And then up at the top, there are different animals and plants you'll find in a wetland. Notice how it says alligator. This book talks about all kinds of different wetlands, not just Michigan wetlands. We don't have alligators here. We do have some of the other features that you'll see in this book, like we have cattails, which are in the top middle. We have herons. I showed you we have a blue heron, and there's a white one too. We do not have mangrove trees. Those are in wetlands that you might find in Florida. There's peat, there's water lilies, and a mangrove swamp is again down in Florida or down near maybe North Carolina. And there's things called salt marshes. Salt marshes are actually where fresh water and salt water are so close together that there's actually a little bit of salt in the water there. So those are down near places that are close to oceans. We are not near an ocean, even though we have some really big lakes in Michigan. So let's see what we have here. What do you think a wetland is? Many wetlands are always covered with a shallow layer of water. Some wetlands even seem dry on the surface, but they have a lot of water in the soil. There are many types of wetlands. In a marsh, the ground surface is underwater all or most of the time. So this is a picture of a marsh. A marsh does look similar to our pond. A marsh is too wet for trees and shrubs to take root. Grassy plants like cattails, bulrushes, and reeds grow in marshes. Water lilies and duckweed often grow on top of the water. So this is what you'll sometimes see small animals and insects on. In a lot of books, we'll see a frog sitting on a lily pad. And they do have these flowers that will blossom on the lily pads. A swamp is flooded for at least part of the year. Some trees and shrubs can grow in a swamp. Swamps and marshes often form along the banks of slow-moving rivers and streams. You may also find one on the edge of a lake or pond. These are freshwater wetlands. A salt marsh sometimes forms where a river flows into the ocean. The water level in a salt marsh rises and falls with the ocean tides. Many fish, shellfish, and other sea creatures live in salt marshes. There's even been times you might be able to find a picture on the internet where there are some dolphins that come up into the freshwater marshes, which really surprises me. Mangrove swamps are salt marshes found in warm places. They are named after the mangrove trees that grow there. Most trees need fresh water to grow, but mangrove trees thrive in salty ocean water. Thrive means grow well. Their tangled roots reach far above the muddy ground. Alligators and crocodiles, beavers and otters, turtles and frogs, snakes and salamanders are among the many animals that live in swamps and marshes. Long-legged birds like herons wade along the shore and through the shallow waters looking for fish. Dragonflies and other insects buzz around. And this says great blue heron, redneck grebe catching a dragonfly. A bog is another type of wetland. Its water does not come from a stream, a lake, or an ocean. Rainwater keeps the soil in a bog damp and spongy. So a bog actually doesn't have water flowing into it like our pond does from another bigger water source. It's just where the rain has gathered and it stays wet all the time. The plant life in a bog is much simpler than in a marsh or swamp. Moss usually covers large areas of the ground. When the plants in a bog die, they do not rot away, so layers and layers of dead plants build up on top of each other. The weight of the upper layers pushes down on the lower layers. This turns the plants into a dense soil-like material called peat. Some people dig up peat and burn it like wood to heat their homes. I've heard people in Michigan call it peat moss. When heavy rains fall or winter snows melt, much of the water is held by wetlands. By holding the water, wetlands help keep the land around them from being flooded. People didn't always know that, though. They drained many wetlands and covered them with landfill. Now they're trying to save the wetlands that are still left. So they would actually fill in that area with landfill, which means dirt and rocks and different types of soil, and they fill it in so they can build on top of it. But what happens is they find out that that whole area will then flood. We do have a place around us that's like that. If you're going over by Partridge Creek, there's a golf course, and it must be Partridge Creek Golf Course. I'm really not sure, to be honest. It was there before the mall was, but there's an area right by Romeo Plank Road that always flooded when it rained, and the water would get very high in that area, and they couldn't golf anymore. And that's because they created that golf course, and when they did, they filled in different parts and didn't leave enough room for the water to drain. And now they've gone back in there and actually fixed part of that to make it so that it's more friendly to the environment and the water can flow and not flood so much. In large wetlands that like Everglades National Park in Florida and the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia and Florida, life goes on as it always has. And then we're back to the picture dictionary where it shows you some of the animals and plants that they talked about in the story. So we learned about a bog, a marsh, a swamp, and a wetland. Which one did I say was the most like the pond? We also learned about a mangrove swamp. We know that that and the salt marsh cannot be like our pond because those have what kind of water in them? Hmm, think about that. See you soon.